What's up, everybody? Back with another Survivor video with professional picks. Some tough losses in week 3, but if you're here, you're probably still alive in some capacity. Let's take a look at week 4 and see how we can advance on to week 5. As always, don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying it and hopefully finding it useful. Let me know in the comment section who you're picking this week, or if you have any questions on who to take and want some advice or at least a different perspective. And then subscribe to the channel if you want to get more NFL content. But first, let's take a look at the potential picks this week. If you watched last week's video, you know that this week has a lot less big favorites. You see the 49ers here are far and away the biggest favorite of the week. And I think one of the biggest favorites of the season at 14 points and a 90% chance to win. A couple other teams that are favored by a touchdown, but then it really starts to drop off here. And we really had to scrape the bottom of the barrel and find 3 teams that you might be considering that are only favored by 3 points here. So certainly a tough week, and that's why it's always important to consult the schedule and see what teams are doing in the future. You can see here that there are some teams that, have a few games left in the schedule. If you're as good as the 49ers, you probably have plenty of survivor opportunities. If you're a team like the Broncos and you're winless so far, you're not really going to have many. So something to consider when you're choosing your teams. Certainly always good to keep in mind when you might pick a team later on in the season. Let's get to the first slated teams we want to talk about, and those are the teams that you should proceed with caution on. That does not necessarily mean that you should avoid these teams, but know that if you were to take these teams, you are taking on significantly more risk than the teams above them. I want to talk about this bottom 3 teams that are all favored by 3 points. That is the Steelers, the Saints, and the Broncos. Let's talk about the Saints here first. They are the only team here that is actually even with their matchup as according to the spread. As we know by watching these videos, or if you don't know, the home team is always given 3 points of advantage. Right now, the Saints are favored by 3 points, and they are the home team, which implies that on a neutral turf, the Saints and the Bucks would be a pick'em game. So you can see here that the money line and the odds to win here are lower than the other 2 teams that are favored by the same amount. That is definitely scary. Again, the Saints here are playing a divisional game. As you know, we like to avoid those games in general. You can see that the Jags losing last week was a big knockout for a lot of leagues, myself included. And sometimes crazy stuff happens in divisional games, and it's usually best to avoid that. That being said, or in addition, however, the Saints were probably going to be without their quarterback, Derek Carr, who's out with a shoulder injury. That leaves Jameis Winston and probably some Taysom Hill action at quarterback. That really hasn't gone too well for the Saints in the past, at least long term. Jameis Winston prone to turnovers, and Taysom Hill at quarterback, not really the most passer-friendly quarterback in the league. So something to keep an eye on there, and something you certainly need to be aware of. But the Steelers got the Texans. I think out of these games, I want to say I like it the most, but as seeing how the Bears have been playing, I'm not too sure. Steelers defense is legit, no matter what's going on the offensive side of the football for them. You saw that against the Raiders. But as we said in a few of our videos last week, the Raiders offense had struggled. And that's exactly what you saw against a better defense against the Steelers. And it wasn't too much of a surprise to me to see the Steelers come out on top on the road in Vegas. They're playing the Texans here over a pretty weak defense, but have, they have made some flashes. They certainly picked off Trevor Lawrence a couple times, and, their defense certainly kept the Texans in the game and were a big reason why they won. But on top of that, C.J. Stroud has really impressed me with especially with some of the wide receiver plays he's been getting. That offense is humming. It hasn't looked too. I thought he was going to be very turnover prone in the NFL, as he wasn't. The separation that his wide receivers are getting for the Texans is not the same that he was getting at Ohio State. And despite that, he's still making great plays and fitting the ball into a tight window. So I'm pretty impressed with that, which makes me a little bit more nervous for the Steelers pick here. While I think the Steelers are better on defense, the Texans have a bit of an edge on offense. Ultimately, I think the Steelers should win the game, but because it's a road game and only 3 points, I would probably stay away. And the last one, the Broncos, who just got beat by 70 to 20 in Miami. They're on the road again, taking on the Bears, who got walloped by the Chiefs, and all that being in Taylor Swift's presence in addition to that. So Not that that matters at all. But the Broncos here, you will seldom see a team lose by 50 and then become the favorite the next week, all while having 0 wins. But that's exactly where the Broncos find themselves. There's not much you can really say with stats here or with the eyeball test because both these teams look horrible. It's a question of which team you think is worse. Vegas is telling you that the Bears are worse even at home. They're still underdogs. So on a neutral field, the Broncos would be 6-point favorites, which is even crazier to think about after losing by 50 points. I think of these three, the Broncos are the safest pick as they have the best quarterback play of these three. Even though Russell Wilson is a shell of what he used to be in Seattle, he's still better than, I think, Jameis Winston, and Kenny Pickett hasn't impressed too much this year, one of the lowest QBRs in football. Also going against one of the worst defenses in the league, if not the worst defense in the league, in Chicago's defense, who was left without a defensive coordinator after all this Allen Williams drama. It's probably a good spot. If you were to take the Broncos and you hadn't taken them against the Commanders, this would probably be the time. Although, again, it's a very risky play, only being 3 points and for losing by 15 last week. Moving on to the best pick, probably doesn't take you much to figure out that the 49ers that are hosting the Cardinals this week is the best pick. You rarely see teams favored by 2 touchdowns. It's even more rare for me to see that against a divisional opponent, but that's, again, where the 49ers find themselves this week. There are probably going to be people that say, well, the Cardinals just beat the Cowboys, and they look like one of the best teams in football, so what do we do here? I don't care at all about the outcome of that game. I think the Cowboys were busy looking past the Cardinals as they faced the 49ers in a couple of weeks, and even the Patriots this week. I don't think they came to play that game. I think the Cardinals, after they got robbed of 2 wins in the first 2 weeks, were dead set and had a killer mindset on this game against the Cowboys. They came out ready to go. Cowboys came out flat. Too many turnovers from Dak Prescott, and that's what allowed the Cardinals to win. I don't think that's going to happen in this game against the 49ers, who are just as good, if not better, than the Cowboys, especially in the trenches with the offensive line and defensive line. Very comparable to what the Cowboys have. But they just have a little bit better execution on both sides of the ball, and you can chalk that up to better coaching, I think. Between the 49ers asserting themselves in the run game and really controlling the ball and time of possession, and with that defensive line causing havoc, especially guys like Nick Bosa, who's just a constant threat to offensive lines everywhere, I would be surprised to see the Cardinals compete in this game. And I think, without a doubt, the 49ers are the best pick, and I think that if you haven't picked them yet, that should be your pick this week. As always, we're going to talk about a value play. Just because it's a value play doesn't mean it's the best pick or even a winner. With good value comes good risk. With this week's value, we're talking about the Eagles hosting the Commanders. 7-point favorites here. The Eagles look pretty solid. I'm not too impressed with Jalen Hurts' play this year. I know we had some flu-like symptoms coming into the game against the Bucs, threw a couple picks. A little shaky, but I am very impressed with this defense and how they are constantly allowing this offense multiple opportunities, even when they shouldn't, to score the football and really push the ball downfield and bail out the offense when either they make turnovers or they punt and go 3 and out. So, these guys and the Eagles have just done a great job in the front office, drafting guys on the defensive side of the football from Georgia who just keep panning out and keep being huge helps to this defense, especially in the front 7. You got a great cornerback in Darius Slay that's really been helping them out, especially when James Bradbury is healthy on the other side of the field at corner with him. This defense is the real unsung hero of this Eagles team, despite how good their offense can look sometimes. And I think, you got a great value with the Eagles here, especially when you look at the schedule. Being the divisional winner last year and then a Super Bowl runner-up, you're going to draw a tough schedule and get a lot of number 1 seeds in the prior year, and that's exactly what they have on their upcoming schedule, and a lot of road divisional games too. And we can take a look here. You can take a look at all of the other teams that are presented, but I'm just going to focus in on the Eagles here. You see their next few games, on the road against 2 good defensive teams. You normally want to stay away from that. You got Miami, who's looking like possibly the best team in football, on the road against the divisional opponent, at home against the divisional opponent that happens to be the Cowboys that look great, Kansas City, Buffalo, Niners, Dallas on the road. Tough games. On the road in Seattle, you could make the argument that could be picked. There's certainly going to be better games that week. Giants, again, divisional opponent. even though it's at home. If Saquon's back, that makes things a little more interesting. And then finally, they get the Cardinals at home, which should be a slam dunk win for them. Long story short, there's not a ton of games I absolutely love for the Eagles for the rest of the season until week 17. And so I think it's a great time to pick them here, even against a divisional opponent, Washington. 7-point favorites to 7-point favorites, and it's a good value for a team that is very good and obviously a Super Bowl contender, and getting 7 points with a pretty tough schedule throughout the rest of the year. The one more point that I want to make about this Eagles game here is that, again, it's value. There's extra caution in this game because it is a divisional game. And if you recall last year, the Eagles were undefeated throughout 9-10 weeks of the season. And it wasn't until they played the Commanders, albeit it was in Washington, that they got their first loss. This Commanders team is solid, especially in their defensive front seven and defensive line. And that's a pretty good way to beat the Eagles if you're going to stand a chance, is to control that offensive line of scrimmage. If you watch the Eagles much this year, you'll know that they have one of the top offensive lines in the league, if not the best offensive line in the league, and use that to bully their teams, to control the run game throughout their solid running back room and with Jalen Hurts himself. So the Commanders, the way they beat the Eagles last year was stopping that run game, stifling both the running backs and Jalen Hurts with that run game. And if they can do that again, then they're going to have a chance against the Eagles. You like to think here that with 7-point favorites at home there, that the Eagles take care of business. So there is value there, but again, certainly caution to take. Talking about the other games here, we talked about best pick, proceed with caution, value. These are some other games that don't really fall into that. Chiefs at the Jets. The Jets undoubtedly have a great defense, but they're really going to struggle on offense, and that's probably where they ultimately find their downfall against the Chiefs. Chiefs have a pretty solid defense too. I think they get overlooked a lot because the show is really on Travis Kelce, Mahomes, and that offense. But I think this game with the Jets defense is going to be closer than the 10-point, 9.5-point spread that the line is giving the Chiefs, even on the road. You probably think that Zach Wilson has a turnover or two, and if he does, and that's when this game really gets out of hand. But if he doesn't, this Jets defense will keep them in the game, because I think that Chiefs offense is so one-dimensional with the game with Kelce. I don't want to read too much into them putting up 40-plus against the Bears, because that was the Bears defense, and the Jets defense is just about the polar opposite. So I really think that time to take the Chiefs was last week. You can make the argument it's right now, but I think the Chiefs on the road against a really good defense is probably best to stay away. Another game, Cowboys at the Patriots. Cowboys could have a tough loss. Like I said, I think they were overlooking the Cardinals drastically, like a lot of teams have done this year, but basically every team has done this year. But they were the one team that wasn't able to make a second half comeback against them. Now they're at home against the Patriots. 7-point favorites here. Again, you're getting a 7-point favorite, so it's certainly a decent pick, but the Cowboys are going to face much easier opponents this season than the Patriots, even if they're at home. The Patriots, as you saw against the Jets, have a great defense, and there are guys all over the football field that can make plays. Patriots are going to do what they do and try to outcoach you and win, and that certainly could happen against the Cowboys. With Mike McCarthy as their head coach, I'm not the biggest believer in him being an X's and O's football savant head coach. That's certainly what Belichick is and what he's proven to be. If there's any coach in football that can find a way to win against a better talented team, it's the Patriots and Bill Belichick. However, the Cowboys still have guys like Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and that defensive side of the football and that D-line. Patriots offensive line isn't what it used to be, and it's actually a bottom third unit in the league, and that's probably where they meet their match in this Cowboys game, not really being able to get the run going and not being able to give Mac Jones time in the pocket, and that's probably where the Cowboys win this game. But again, I really don't like taking teams when they're playing the Patriots, just because anything could happen in those games, despite how good the Cowboys are. Raiders and Chargers here. I was intrigued to see the line for the 1-2 Chargers at home against divisional opponent Raiders at 5.5. But a big part of that is because that Jimmy Garoppolo is in concussion protocol, and the Raiders offense, outside of Devontae Adams, doesn't look too great this year, and their defense is one of the bottom tier defenses as usual. So if you are going to take the Chargers here, there is a little bit of value, but you really got to keep an eye on the Jimmy Garoppolo quarterback situation in Las Vegas. If he does play, I'm sure this line would not be 5.5, and so keep an eye on that, monitor that situation, and that's really going to be the deciding factor if you take the Chargers or not. I think, like I said, divisional games are always a little bit more scary, so best to probably stay away from this one regardless. But if Jimmy G comes back from this concussion protocol and is able to play in this game, then I think it's really a non-starter and a non-pick this week. If you watch the Chargers-Vikings game, you were probably a little bit surprised the Chargers were able to pull that win out, especially when they went for it on 4th down deep in their own territory and got stopped late in that 4th quarter. Again, I don't think Brandon Staley is that great of a coach. It seems like he's constantly putting his team in jeopardy for the win and constantly trying to blow 4th quarter leads. So the Chargers are a team I certainly try to stay away from in Survivor and in a lot of other aspects as well. So I'd be a little cautious about this game too. And then finally, the Vikings, who were at the losing end of that Chargers game last week, take on the Panthers on the road. Both teams are winless. C.J. Stroud not going to play this game, so it's going to be Andy Dalton starting again for the Panthers. I honestly don't hate Andy Dalton starting because I think he's a serviceable backup quarterback, as you've seen throughout his career. But I think the Vikings are hurting and they're really due for a win, and that's why I like them in this game. They're showing to be 6.5 points better than the Panthers on a neutral site. Panthers, while they have a good defense, show that they cannot do really much on offense in any facet of offensive football play, whether that be the run game or the pass game, especially now that they don't have Bryce Young with a little bit more of a dual threat quarterback. That element of the offense goes away as well. I think the Panthers can hold the Vikings offense a little bit, but ultimately there's no stopping Justin Jefferson, and I think that's going to be the real difference in this game, and that's where the Vikings beat the Panthers on the road and get their first win. Just one more thing. There's a little bit of value, and I really stress caution about this game. There's some value, again, in this Broncos game. The Broncos are going to be, they're one of the worst teams in football. They are 0-3. They will not get that many wins this season with the way they've been playing. However, I believe that the Bears are a worse team, and I do also believe that the Broncos are significantly better than the Bears, especially when the Bears don't have anyone you can really call their name and say, that guy is really good. The Broncos don't have many, but they have a couple, and the number one guy there being Patrick Surtain II at cornerback. The Bears don't really have a great offense in any aspect, but when you get Patrick Surtain taking away your top weapon and DJ Moore, then what is that Bears offense going to look like? I really don't want to know. I really don't want to watch, but I think the Broncos just being able to take away a threat, probably the number one threat in that offense, will stand a great chance against this Bears, who have, again, an anemic defense that can't stop anything, not in the run game, not in the pass game. So I think you see the Broncos get their first win here. Again, scary game, only being 3-point favorites. They're taking on a lot of risk here, but I think this will be the last time of the season you will take the Broncos. And so definitely value in that game as well. Without a doubt, Week 3 was a tough one for a lot of Survivor leagues, but hopefully that you are still in, and hopefully this video will help you make an informed decision, or a more informed decision of who you want to take in Survivor in Week 4. Good luck, everyone, and hopefully we see you again in Week 5.